Madam, auto madam,
Yes, sir. Shall we
you can
start?
start now.
Yes, sir. We'll start. Sir, Saurabh, sir. Sir,
Yes, I'm here.
shall we
I'm here.
start, sir? Yes.
Yes,
All the
please,
participants.
please,
Yes.
please.
Good afternoon, all the participants. We are here for the day two, session three. Hope you all are enjoying the morning sessions that we had till now. And the next is also going to be a very exciting lecture. Here we are going to have a lecture on teleportation by Dr. Saurabh Basu. Sir, I take the privilege of introducing you to all our participants. Dr. Saurabh Basu, professor in Department of Physics at IIT Guwahati. He has over 80 research publications, 11 scholars have been awarded PhDs under his guidance, and presently 5 are under his supervision. He did his PhD from IIT Kanpur and postdoc from Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Mumbai, and also from Queen's University, Canada. Beside these academic excellence, he has been bestowed with administration responsibilities as HOD, Dean, and Directorship. We are blessed to have you here, sir. Please grace the occasion with your talk. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So let me just present. It says a window. I have to share a window, probably.
Yes, sir,
Yes.
you can share, sir.
Yes, sir.
See if you can see my slide. Can you see?
Yes, sir. It started.
All right. See, as I present, I don't see anyone. So if you need to stop me, please do that. And also, I would request you to, interrupt me at the close of my lecture so that I don't overshoot time.
Okay, sir.
Uh, Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. This lecture is on quantum teleportation, and this is one of the most important things about quantum computation and many of the quantum algorithms which are being developed as we speak. And you all know about the quantum computer that Google had come up last year or maybe year before, and there's a lot of work going on still in that direction on algorithms and so on. So I take a small model for explaining what is quantum teleportation, and as we go along you'll see that there's in a very limited sense you can transport an object without actually taking it along the way, and this is what is known as teleportation. And so we, as you have seen in this, FDP for the last so many days, or probably started yesterday. I just review very basics of quantum computing and start with qubits. And these we start with this two-level quantum systems, which are by photons are examples of two-level quantum systems with left and right circularly polarized beams, which denote the helicity of these photons. There are also electron spins, spin half objects, which have up and down, and there are nuclear spins, and so on. And these up and down, left and right, and various other things are actually taken as 0 and 1, which are the bits that we all are familiar with, and they form the basis states for the computation that's going to start. All right, and so with 0 and 1, one can form us with that string. One can form a number, just one number, whereas if they're quantum bits or so-called the qubits, which are formed by the linear superposition of alpha 0 plus beta 1, which are written in that Dirac notation, these are called kets. And with this constraint that alpha square plus beta square equal to 1, you can form a practically infinite number of numbers with this qubit, with different choices of alpha and beta, which is not possible in a classical computer. And so this is Feynman said is that you draw just a little arrows and all. That's all. I mean, this is he's on a lighter note. This is what we have done. We have drawn a 0 and 1 axis with the kets. With the kets actually form the Hilbert space of the problem, and it's just a restricted Hilbert space which is formed of 0 and 1. And we have made a state out of this by linearly superposing alpha 0 and beta 1. And because I think most of you have maths background, just to say that a coin, if you toss, it's either going to be head or tail as soon as the coin lands on the surface. But a quantum coin would keep spinning and will never let it fall on the ground so that you can make a measurement. The moment you make a measurement, it collapses into one of the states, which is either a head or a tail for the coin. So in that sense, a quantum coin is always spinning and never lands on the ground for you to make a decision. All right. And after this, we go to the quantum logic gates, and there are a number of them called as the X gate and so on, which changes a 0 input to a 1 and a 1 input to a 0. So what would it do to this superposed state, which is alpha 0 plus beta 1, which we have taken as a prototype of a qubit? So it makes it an alpha 1 and beta 0. So that's the function or the application of a quantum NOT gate. And in a matrix representation, we can write it as this 0, 1, 1, 0. You can see that if it acts on the 0 gate, it makes it 1, and if it acts on the 1 gate, it makes it 0, and so on. And then there are these other logic gates as well, which we represent or rather talk about now. So this logic gates are represented more compact form by what are called as Pauli matrices. If you have learned some quantum mechanics in the at the graduate level, so these are spin angular momentum these quantities, and these are in the 2 by 2 basis. These are always written in the basis of up and down, that is in the z direction. It's basically a eigenstate of sigma z, which is called the z component of the Pauli matrix. And so X gate is like the sigma X, Y gate is like the sigma Y, which makes a 0 to a I into minus 1. And what is I? I is root over of minus 1. So it's actually rotating a ket by exponential I pi by 2. So I means exponential I pi by 2, which means it rotates a ket by a pi by 2 and so on. So if it's polarized in the positive Z direction, then it'll make it polarize in the right direction. So in the direction that your right hand arrow would point, and so on and so forth. And then there are sigma Y and sigma Z and so on. So we don't want to talk about this, but these are important for us to understand. Now let's talk about what is a quantum teleportation and why people are so intricately involved with such studies and such research. So you see that there are two boxes, which are basically two labs, which are A and B, marked as A and B. And then there's a blue vertical band which separates A and B, which means that A and B can actually belong to different galaxies. Okay, in the sense not only separated in space, it can be separated by even anything that you can think of. There's no connection, excepting that there's a telephone line that exists. So one connection, one wire has to exist between the labs A and B through these impenetrable walls. And our job is to understand how we actually teleport A to B without actually taking a journey into the way. And what we mean is that we have two fax machines, okay? And this is known, right? I mean, fax is used everywhere. So I think the faxes have gone down in their importance because of the emails and scans available, but otherwise, at least till about 5 years back, faxes were very important, at least from the ministry to send orders and things like that. So it is being printed at a given place, and it's going to be transported at a different place and so on. But of course, we are not talking about a fax machine. We are talking about transporting matter. And let's see what's the difficulty with that. You have a machine, a fax machine, which fully measures the state of the input it transmits the results via the phone line that we have already discussed, and then it reconstructs in the the recipient machine all this received information. But whether it is possible for teleporting matter and energy, okay, and not only because the reason is that the quantum mechanics itself is a hindrance. The reason being that when you talk about transporting a matter, you have to talk about variables such as x and t, where x is a position variable of a system and p is a momentum variable of a system. And quantum mechanics dictates that you can't measure them together because of an uncertainty principle that was told by Heisenberg.
Heisenberg's. Sorry.
Anything?
No, sir. Sorry.
Oh, all right. No, that's fine. So there is no solution. There's no classical solution for this problem. And the only solution could be a quantum entangled state. Okay. And this is something very important. I'll just touch upon quantum entangled state. Before that, let me tell a little story about what happened and why Einstein was so very, proud about his discovery of general theory of relativity and special theory of relativity and so on. All right. Is there a question?
No, sir. There is some disturbance here. Suresh, please mute them. Suresh, sir, please mute the participants from where we are getting the disturbance.
No, I'm doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Sir.
So it starts.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. It starts with a paradox, and I hope that you have come across this word in a number of times in the course of your teaching various courses. It means that something seems very reasonable and rational, but on the other hand, the opposite or the contradiction also seems to be equally rational. So that's called as a paradox. So there's some paradox called as the Einstein-Podolsky. There's a bit of spelling mistake there. Podolsky and Rosen, these are the name of these three people, which are called EPR. And they have raised a question, and they have said that quantum mechanics is never complete, and in some sense it's wrong, and so on. And let's try to understand that what was the problem. In a very layman's language, suppose I have two golf balls in my hand, or two, whatever coins in my hand. Let's talk about golf balls. One of them is, say, red, and the other is white. Okay, and you can, of course, distinguish the ones that is red and from the white one. And I don't tell you that which hand has a red ball and which hand has a white ball. And then I take my hand behind my back and then take it up in front of you with the palms closed and ask you that can you predict which hand has which ball? And suppose I offer myself to open one hand, say I open my left palm and show that it contains a red ball, it automatically means the other hand, which is my right hand, has a white ball. Okay, I mean the other one basically. Okay, and this is really possible even if my two hands belong to two different places, that is, which are far off. So that tells that the moment you know the measurement of one variable, that is, say, the white ball in the or the red ball in the left hand, you automatically know the white ball in the right hand, and so on. Okay, and this Einstein felt that it's threatening his theory of relativity, because he said that the supreme velocity that something can have are those from photons, which are called as a light. A stream of photons or beam of photons are called as light. And this light seems to have the velocity which is the ceiling of velocity that can be attained by any particle. Okay, and that's the basically that's the first statement of special theory of relativity. But if you get to know that what my right hand has immediately, if you make a measurement of the left hand, no matter how far are my hands, one hand is from the other, then the information is actually passed on with a velocity which is greater than that of light. Light would still take some time to know from one place to go from one place to another, and you know that from the sun to the earth, sunlight takes about 8 minutes or so. So light has a finite velocity, but this seems to have an infinite velocity in terms of communication. And then later on, people like John Bell and all that, they came and said there is some hidden variable and things like that. And finally it is found that neither quantum mechanics is wrong, nor the general theory or special theory of relativity is wrong. And this is called as the EPR paradox. So let me, sort of say that such paradoxes are important in this communication, faster than light communications. And we have to have a state which is called as an entangled state. And what's an entangled state will come slowly. And this is written for a spin half object. It's a up down minus a down up. So that's the composite state of two particles. But this state has no classical analog because you'll never be able to extricate the individual quantum states of each of these particles from this. So it cannot be broken down in any way into any of its constituents quantum states. So the Hilbert space of this quantum entangled state is completely different than that of the Hilbert spaces of each of these particles. Okay, so this is just saying the same thing. And let's come to this quantum teleportation. And it was first coined in a book by this sci-fi writer called C.H. Fort. And then it has been used in many ways and so on. And then it's basically, I'll tell you right at the end that actually quantum teleportation has been achieved in a limited sense with a beam of photons, not with spins, because spins, getting them individually or rather standalone is a difficulty. But then nevertheless, it's the same thing. I mean, with right circularly polarized photons and left circularly polarized photons, it has been achieved from lab A to lab B, which are actually physically separated by 800 meters. And this happened in Europe. I'll just tell you right at the end. So we instead of photons, we talk about quantum spins, but the process is exactly same, and the underlying formalism or theory or concepts are exactly the same. So if you take a spin half particle, as we told earlier, that the composite state is going to be a superposition of these two up and down spins. Is just like this 0 and 1. And we got a qubit out of a 0 and 1 with alpha 0 and beta 1. Here we've used A and B. And then, of course, A square plus B square equal to 1 and so on. So we take a spin like that. And then we also define spins which are polarized along x-axis. You remember that we have talked about sigma y, operations by sigma y, one of the Pauli matrices which contain these entries such as I and minus I, and the I actually corresponds to exponential I pi by 2, which means when it operates on a upspin, it'll
Sir, there is some pause, I think. Sir, can you hear us? Yes.
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 Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
clear,
okay.
sir, now.
Okay. So this new basis, the right basis and the left basis, they are related to the old basis by this transformation. And if you want to know how these transformations come, you have to understand that if you go from one, basic linear algebra, that if you can go from one basis to another, then there must be a sort of unitary transformation that takes you from one basis to another. But whichever basis you go, if you calculate the expectation value or the average values of observables, then they'll always come out to be same. And these transformations are based on such presumptions that you will get same expectation values. And so these are up and down written in terms of the right and left. Okay. And then, of course, you can write this up and down exactly using the same transformation that we have written above. And then it's, it's a plus b by square root of 2 and right, and then a minus b by square root of 2 left, and then a plus b whole square by 2 is the probability to be seen in the right direction, and a minus b whole square by 2 is the probability for the particle to be found in the negative half, that is minus, in the left direction. All right. All right, let me skip here and go over to the motivation. The motivation is to achieve teleportation of a single spin. So we'll have a lab A, or let's call it a box A, and a single spin in box B. So we'll put a spin in box A and a single spin in box B. And the goal is to make the spin in box B, make sure that the spin in box B after the teleportation is same as the spin in box A before teleportation. Okay. There's a problem, as we have already said, even for an electron, just not a spin. For an electron, this means that we have to teleport both position and momentum, which are prohibited by the uncertainty principle of Heisenberg. Okay. So we start with two quantum spins, up and down. The combined state of that is written as A up up, B up down, C down up, and D down down. This is simply a product of this matrix product of these two states. And with these probabilities A square, B square, C square, and D square, as you can see that such as A square is a probability A mod square, because these A, B's are in general complex quantities. These are probability that both spins are in the up state. B square is the first in up and the second in down, and so on and so forth, with the constraint that A square plus B square plus C square plus D square should be equal to 1, which means the total probability preserved. So what happens if we simply measure the first spin? So for the first spin, if the outcome or the probability is A square plus B square, and for the down it is C square plus D square. So we can write the superposition for this phi up for the 1 that you see there, Roman 1, which is equal to A divided by that the coefficient, and then up and then up down, and so on and so forth. And similarly for the phi down. And then, there are various things that we are doing. Let's skip that and then go over to the gates that we want for quantum teleportation. So one gate that we use is called as the X gate, which you have already seen. So what an X gate does is it's just a NOT gate. It converts an up to a down and to a down to an up. Okay, and this is what you see in the first box, red box that you see. If you do it twice, then we'll bring back to the original state. So which means x square is equal to 1, or identity operation. Now, if you define a z, this rotation about the z-axis by an angle pi, which is called as a z gate, and then a up will become, a up itself, but a b down will become a minus b down. Okay, because the transformations of this spin is what is written there, exponential I theta n cap dot s, and since n cap dot s is in the same direction for the first thing, so that's why it doesn't change sign, whereas n cap and s are in the different direction, that's why for the second term it changes sign. And this is precisely what you get if you operate a quantum state with Pauli matrix, which is called as a sigma z, one of the 3 Pauli matrices. A third operation, let's call it a CX operation. It's called as a conditional X operation. It looks at the first spin. If it is up, then it does nothing. If it is down, then it flips the second spin. Okay, so if you look at the CX operation on the composite state, it's A up up, So since the first spin is up, it doesn't do anything to the first term. Second term, it doesn't do anything. The third term, it does, and inverts the second spin, and similarly does the same for the fourth term. Okay, so this is called as a CX operation. So you have seen three so far: X, Z, and the CX. Okay, and this is all what we need. So we need in the lab A spin, one spin. Let's call it spin 1, which it is. It's in the superposed state, A up and B down, just like our qubit. And then call it God, call it demon. Somebody has made an entangled state in the very early this thing, like in the long past, or in the infinite past. One has made these entangled states. As I told you, that formation of an entangled state is the most important thing. Entangled state of two spins, call it spin 2 and spin 3, and in that a spin 2 is in the lab A and the spin 3 is in the lab B, and that's all what we need. And we need these operations that we have just told. And if you have this, then of course I simply sort of say this. I form the composite state of these three spins. You can easily check that these are correct. And then the flowchart for quantum teleportation proceeds like, if you apply a CX operation on this state phi that is written in the first line, which is a composite state, then it looks at the first spin. If it is up, does nothing. If it is down, then it inverts the second spin, and so on and so forth. Okay, so this is the CX operation. Then step 2 is that now measure spin 2. Spin 2, remember that it is in lab A in the Z basis. And if you do that, these are the probabilities that you should get. And because A's and B's are a priori same, this probability comes out to be half. So we get 50% for each outcome. So the state for the up spin for spin 2 is going to be this state, this quantum state, A by root 2, and up, up, down, and plus B by root 2, down, up, up. Okay. And step 3 is that now measure the first spin in the X basis. X basis means the right arrow and the left arrow. And if you do that, then it's this kind of states that you get. And when you again, for the right arrow, if you want to know the right arrow outcome for spin 1, it is going to be this A by root 2, up, up, down, and right, up, down, and the right, up, up. So that's for the spin 1. Step 4 is that lab A communicates all these results to lab B. And this is where the phone line comes to of use. I already told you that there's one phone line that has to be there, just like a fax line. Either it's a fiber optic cable or it's normal phone line and so on. So in lab B, the following processes are done. So this processing has to be done in lab B. If it is right arrow for spin 1 and down arrow for spin 2, do nothing. If it is left arrow for spin 1 and down arrow for spin 2, apply the Z gate to spin 3. And if it is right arrow for spin 1 and up arrow for spin 2, apply X gate to spin 3. And if it's left arrow for spin 1 and up arrow for spin 2, apply successively Z gate and then X gate to spin 3. So if you go back, then you see that you have a up arrow and right arrow and up and down, and right arrow up and up. So this tells you that we have to apply 3. This in the step 5, this Roman 3 that you see there, you have to apply that. And if you do that, then so it's 3 that is applicable, and then perform X gate. And if you do an X gate, then you get this particular. So on that state, which I just showed, on this state that is here, if you apply an X gate, that is the sigma X, you get this state, and so on. So you see that in lab B, so the state for the 2 spins in lab A is, so in lab A you have a right and up, and for the lab B it's A up and B down. Okay, and this was precisely the unknown state that we started off in lab A. Okay, so now we get it in lab B, and this is called quantum teleportation. Okay, this is the concept of that. Since I think I'm closing out on time, or rather finishing off quickly. What happened is actually in Vienna, which is in Austria, they have been able to quantum teleport a state which is across the Danube River, which is 800 meters, from one lab to another, which are 800 meters apart. And earlier attempts were all on laboratory scales and ideal conditions. And this experiment actually is done intentionally, where all the classical factors such as large temperature fluctuations and environmental disorder, etc., are taken into account. And the experiment used photons. Now, this is what is the most important difference, but nothing that you call up to be left and down to be right. And then the right arrow that we have discussed so far to be a 45-degree polarization, and then you have everything falling into place. So you just change these notations and you can still explain what we have just done for the past 20 minutes or so. These are there, and so 45-degree polarized beams are like up and right and left spins. And what they found is that there's something called fidelity. I will not go into details. What is fidelity? Fidelity is, you can understand, it's an overlap of quantum states. So they found that actually there's a more than 90% of fidelity for the 45-degree polarized photons, which are like the right arrow or the left arrow. And the experimental run actually lasted for 28 hours, which means it's a robust thing. So a quantum state, if it survives in a macroscopic time domain, it means that it's a stable and an equilibrium situation. So the final words are that the quantum entanglement is the key to quantum teleportation. And quantum entanglement, how do you form quantum entangled states, are no longer theoretical. They are not obscure anymore. They can be done. So physical realization of quantum teleportation may still be possible. And it holds the key to quantum computing. And I just quote here quickly the director of the Vienna experiment. What he says is that we are far from actually transporting real materials, or it cannot happen that we, instead of going to work, we send our clones to the workplace and it does the work for you and then come back, and they don't come back. In fact, you are always there at home. And there are questions of ethical nature of these things and so on. Cloning, human cloning, as you know, that it's not a permissible thing. But there could be enormous development in this direction, theoretical development, and also with the advent of quantum computers, all these things could still be possible. But in a very limited sense, I have shown you how a spin can actually get teleported from one lab to another, which are physically separated by infinite distances, so to say. The requirements are only two. One is that one has to have a quantum entangled state, and the second is that there has to be a phone line, or there has to be a connection by which the people sitting in lab A or lab B should communicate all their findings to lab A, so that all those series of things that we have talked about, that is applying Z gate, X gate, CX gate, and so on and so forth, all those things can be done. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Any questions from the participants?
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's have a discussion session. Please post your questions either in the chat box or you can ask directly. Okay.
it's a little mathematical, but I think things are not too difficult.
Yes.
It can
No.
be in a, you know, a
We
undergraduate
we
course.
followed it, sir. We followed the concept taught by you, explained by you. Uh,
Thank you.
Suresh sir, should I go with the vote of thanks? Well,
Yes, madam.
yeah, yeah. I think some participant has opened the mic. Anyone interested to talk? Any doubts? Somebody unmuted themselves. Okay. Sir, I have one more thing to discuss with you. Not directly, but uh, hope I'm audible now. Sir, just
Yeah.
as we have little time, so I'm asking you, in the Endgame movie that we have seen for Avengers, there is a teletransportation taking place. So I thought it's only a fantasy. So we do have a scientific reason for it, and not now, maybe in future it may happen. Do you agree with this, sir?
No, I don't, because I kind of tried to impress upon that. If you talk about matter, not even a human being, let's talk about just a matter, a simple matter such as an atom, say for example, or a molecule. And a molecule, how do you write the state of a molecule? I am not even talking about a quantum state. If you want to explain the molecule, you say that its position and velocity, right? Or you say position as a function of time, which are all obtained by this molecular dynamics simulations. And the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, which is one of the main governing things about quantum mechanics, and nothing that violates that uncertainty principle. You cannot measure them together. So if you need to teleport something from one place to another, it has to go with entire properties, such as with two hands, two legs, and so on, and with a brain. Here it seems that for a photon with a particular polarization or for a spin, these are not matter. So we have no problem in transporting them. There's just 1 degree of freedom. If you can think of something which has 1 degree of freedom and no two conjugate degrees of freedom, which are otherwise not allowed, then you can do it. But that cannot happen. You and me are matter with a large degrees of freedom. So possibly not a possibility.
Yes.
Possibly, yes.
Thank you, sir. That was very clear. Any more questions? People, you can come with your innovative questions. Sir is here with lot of experience. They can guide us. He can guide us. Yeah, we have a participant, I think. Yes. Okay. Okay, sir, we are done. I think I'll go with the vote of thanks. Yeah. 1 minute, sir.
Wait. Madam.
Yes. Yeah, Raj Reddy sir want to talk to you, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir. Boss, sir. Sir, thank you very much, sir. Sir, your delivery lecture is a very enlightened and thought-provoking to all, sir.
Thank you.
So, sir, the extension of this teleportation, shall we need to go for logic gates up to ADMOD gates and poly-exclusive gates next, followed by, is it quantum Fourier transform applications are required, sir?
Yes. I believe that, the conditional X gate that I have discussed. So if you actually, can find more optimal gates which make this operation simpler, then you can use it for quantum teleportation of probably more complex objects. But what Mamta ma'am had rightly, asked, that whether we can do it for a number of degrees of freedom, that I don't think that would be possible, because especially if they're conjugate degrees. What I mean by conjugate is that there is a commutation relation that exists between them. If that happens, then it's very difficult that you do two operations which changes 2 degrees of freedom. If they have got nothing to do with each other, then probably it can be done.
Thank you, sir.
So, yeah.
Madam.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Sir, one more last question, sir, regarding the computer quantum computing. Is it like we have come across a talk that the speed of the light will not be exceed, but in what way quantum computing is helping us?
Quantum computing will only help you. See, at this moment, the quantum computing is not very helpful in the sense that the way it started is that they tried to find algorithm for square root of very large numbers. Okay, and with all this Shor's algorithm, which I saw is one of the talks that had happened, and they could only do it for square root of 16. But for that, you don't need a supercomputer or a quantum computer. You can do it with your a child of in class probably 4 or 5 can do it. So the quantum computing would go in leaps and bounds. It will make the computing time to be remarkably small as compared to the classical computer because of the reason that of this quantum superposition, the superposition principle that we spoke about, because it searches things at infinitely faster than, infinitely means extremely large factor, by a very large factor than a classical computer. So all these things go parallelly. So if you can think of a parallel computer with a very, very large number of nodes, it will attain the limit of quantum computer. But for that, it becomes extremely expensive. But not that quantum computers are any cheap, because all these logic operations that you saw in this X gate and NOT gate and whatnot,
Yes,
all these things, if we, in order to make them functional, you need to put them at liquid helium temperature, or even lower than that, because these are superconducting qubits. And when you put them, so these running costs would be enormously large. Like now, this Pfizer is not the main, vaccine producer, or rather, India is not buying it so much because of this cold chain that had to be created. So quantum computers will need the cold chains to be created for the qubits to be stored in that at that temperature.
Okay.
So, but with new materials, with new technologies, these could go up to at least liquid nitrogen temperature and so on. In that case, there'll be a lot of things happening with quantum computer. So, if you let alone the speed of light, which is the ultimate thing, the speed of quantum computing would be enormously large as compared to classical computation because of this parallel processing.
Okay.
Suppose you have to do 5 things in a day, and if there are 5 clones of you which are doing one thing at a time, so you'll do everything in 1/5 of the time. So
Yes.
this
Yes, sir. Yeah. This was clear, sir. Yes. Now I'll go ahead with the vote of thanks, sir. Sir, your lecture really, I mean, it was very clear and make many topics that we were still entangled in the mind were cleared, sir. So we really had a very wonderful session today. Hope the participants enjoy it. I would like to I would like to mention few things that will be like takeaway for the session. You introduce us to qubits, a two-level quantum system, then photons, electric spin, nuclear spin, and then how to go for the computational basis state. And you explained about Pauli's matrices, and the very good explanation was from the fax machine. The drawback of that was teleporting matter and energy together. And then we spoke about, I mean, we learn about quantum entanglement according to EPR paradox, and later it was proved that both theories are valid. There is no disagreement between them. Then the first time the word this entanglement, I mean the teleportation, was introduced by C.H. Fort, who is a sci-fi writer, in his book, and later it was the talk was concluded with quantum spins and position and momentum both plays a very important role in teleportation, and it is not supported by Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. And we were introduced to not gate, that is X gate, Z gate, that is depending on rotation, and then CX gate. And at the end, we had learn about the flowchart for quantum teleportation. Sir, it was really a very a very good, enriching learning experience. Hope we will learn more in the future. We are here to, we expect you again, sir, to have more knowledge in the subject. On behalf of CBIT and behalf of all the participants, I thank you once again, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
sir. Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Yeah,
madam.
I request all the participants to, I think I have got one chat here. I will read out quickly. Okay. All the participants, yes. They are thanking Nikhil sir. Nikhil Reddy is thanking